Hello students, today we're going to be making these awesome Thanksgiving pies. To get started, we want to put our name on our paper. We're going to be using black tempera paints and our water in our doggy dish. Remember, the sponge is not for touching, it's for cleaning off your brush. So to create the background, we're going to wet down the tempera cake, and we want it to be kind of a light gray tone. So if yours looks really dark, you may need to re-dip into the water. We're going to begin by drawing a straight line down. And then we're going to create a second line that is parallel to the first line. Remember, parallel lines are two lines that run in the same direction. They never run into each other. You're going to turn your paper and do the same thing on the other side. Once you have done this, we're going to try to pull out that darker tone where the two lines crisscross. We're going to do this by carefully dragging the brush towards us to create these square patches. Be careful not to go outside of this original square. It should look something like this. You may have noticed that this picture has lots of different light grays, medium grays, and dark grays. That is called creating values in your artwork. All right, when you're done, put it onto the drying rack under your class code. Now we're ready to start the drawing. Of course, we need to put our name on the back of our paper, and everybody should have a tracer at their table. If you don't have one, you may need to wait your turn to use one of the tracers. Put one of the tracers in the corner of your paper and then put another one in the other corner of the paper. Notice that the two circles are not touching. You're gonna wanna leave a little bit of space. Let's get started on the next step. To do this step, we're going to create the little crust that comes off the outside of the pies. Notice that I'm doing a nice wavy line around the pie pan. Now I'm going to put a dot in the other pie pan. That's right in the center of the circle. And we're going to cut a slice out. It almost looks like a triangle. Now this part can be very tricky, so make sure you're watching. We're gonna start with the top line of the triangle. Up against the pie pan, we're gonna draw a short angle down. It almost looks like the letter A. Now we're also going to come down from our dot on the bottom line and connect the two lines together. Notice that the two lines are parallel. They're running the same direction. Now from this spot, we're going to curve just like the pie pan does. This part is going to be part of the pie pan, so we're going to add in some texture, those ridges that could be in pie pans. Now we're ready for the next step. Because this pie piece is missing, there wouldn't be any crust left behind. So we're going to draw this wavy crust lines on the parts of the pie that are still there. Because that slice is missing, you would not have any crust there. We're going to begin drawing the texture on the first pie that we started on, and this is going to be some sort of berry type of pie. It could be a cherry pie or a blueberry, raspberry pie, but we're going to begin by drawing these really cool designs that makes pies look so beautiful. I noticed this line looked a little thick, so I went ahead and erased one of the lines to make it thinner. And this looks like something called cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is when two lines overlap with each other. All right, I really like the look of this one, and I'm gonna make the other pie a good old pumpkin pie. And I like whipped cream on my pumpkin pie, so that's what I just drew. Now we're ready to start with our markers. We're gonna learn a new technique with these markers. So you normally would want to color in the whole picture, but that is not what we are doing today. We are just tracing around the outlines of our pies. So the pie crust would be brown, so I'm using a brown marker just to trace on top of my pencil lines. You can see that I'm going really slow to make sure that I stay on top of those lines. Keep in mind this video is in fast forward mode, so this took me a lot longer to do. Once you have your pies traced, we're ready to move on to the next color. It should look something like this. Notice on that second pie that I am only tracing the crust area because that spot is going to be part of the pie pan, which I want it to be like a tin pan, so I'm going to use gray to outline the lines. Watch all of the areas that I outline. So I'm even going to do this small area here so that I can eventually go back in and fill that area in. Do not move on without me because you may end up making a mistake. And this technique we're gonna use is going to be so cool. Now I'm gonna go in and trace the pumpkin pie with an orange marker. Pumpkin pies always kind of have this orange brownish tone, and we want to mimic that same look and make it feel just like a deliciously made pumpkin pie. After you trace around the edges, you're gonna go in with your marker and add some little curved lines. Notice that these lines are following the shape of the rounded pie. Once you have that completed, we're ready to get a yellow marker and do the same thing that we did with the orange. Just creating some more areas to fill in with that marker with the yellow and orange. It's going to give the pie a very nice tone. Next, I'm going to work on the other pie. I wanted to make mine a blueberry pie, so I'm looking for a blue and a purple that I could use. But maybe you want yours to be a cherry pie, and you can use red and orange or something like that, and it would work just as well. Because I wanted mine to be a blueberry pie, this is how you would do it. If you're choosing to use red tones, you would do the same steps, just using the colors that you picked. I'm creating these little circles and I'm going to fill in every space that is just the spots that are not the crust. So it's kind of like the large square spots that are on the pie. If you're unsure on which area to color, try asking your art teacher in training first. Once I finish using the blue marker, I'm gonna go in with my other color that I chose to fill in some other spaces. This is gonna give it a really nice color and add to the dimension of this picture. I'm going to give you all about 3 to 5 minutes to work on this part of the picture. Once you're finished, just wait patiently for the next step. Maybe offer to help somebody else at your team to catch up. Now I'm ready for the last part. The whipped cream is always white, but I go in with a very thin gray color just so that I can add a little bit of value to that area. We are ready to move on, and this is the cool technique that I was explaining to you all. Now we're gonna take just some water, and water is going to turn these markers into a watercolor. It's so amazing how this works. The only reason this works with our markers are because they are water-based. They are not permanent. Permanent markers will not do this technique. Notice that I'm trying to stay in the areas that are supposed to be that particular color. Like the crust here should be brown, but I'm making sure not to drag any of the blues into the crust. I'm going to continue this until my picture is completely finished. Go slow to make sure that you don't overdo your areas or accidentally go outside of the lines. You really don't need a lot of water. If you use too much water, your picture could bleed a whole lot more than what it's supposed to. Bleeding meaning that the colors are going to fade out, and then you're not going to have these really nice lines and colors on your picture because they were overworked. Just use enough water, and when it isn't working anymore, re-dip your paintbrush into the water so that you can continue painting. I hope you all enjoy this style, and once it's completed, you're going to want to air dry it just a little bit. It could take about 3 minutes or 5 minutes, just depending on how wet your paper is. That's why it was so important to not overdo it with the water. Your picture should look similar to this one. Now I am going to let it dry a little bit, so I'm just kind of waving it around in my area, making sure I don't hit anybody, just to help it dry quicker. You can also feel the paper to see if it's ready to be cut. I like to separate the two pies just because it makes it a little bit easier to work with. If you're having a hard time cutting, it's probably because your paper isn't dry enough for cutting, and you need to keep allowing it to have some dry time. So once you have your pictures cut out, we're ready to glue them down onto our paper. Notice that I'm going really slow, making sure I cut these out nice and neatly. I have one done, one more to go. Once you have both pies cut out, you're ready to glue them down on your paper. I have placed them on my background page so that I would know exactly where they fit best. I'm taking my glue bottle and with a very thin line, tracing around the outside of my little pie piece. I'm going to line it up into the corner and then give it a really good long back rub. That's gonna allow the glue to have some grab time. But remember, it's so important that you line up the corners of your pie picture to the background as well. So I have my second pie on here, and then I have to turn it over and rub its back again. Once you feel that the glue is really glued down, then you're ready to sign your name. Now, if you have glue that's oozing out, you might have used way too much glue. Try to control the amount of glue that you're using on the pictures. That way we don't have any wasted. I do have the Sharpie pens for you to sign, and I hope you love this project.